Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Andrew Jacobson. Happy birthday to you. See, Bijou got me all flustered. I gotta do it again.
Everything bothers him.
He's unbothered.
He calls it unbothered, but that's what's cute because everything bothers him. He's bothered. I'm a botherina.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Andrew Jacobson. Happy birthday to you. I'm terrible at singing, and Beej just wants her alligator. Get rid of this little dog. Ugh, I hate her. What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Unbothered by Ty Rivera. I am Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. I have this little bit of a bruise under my eye. I got popped too close with the needle. Just keep it real. It's what it is. I got hit with the needle a little too close. Got some Botox in my eyebrows too. Right now, I'm not exactly happy because this one looks like I can smell what the Rock is cooking. But yeah, that's just really what happened. Was it wasn't the doctor's fault. It was like I had to go out in the heat after I did it, and you're not supposed to go out in the heat because it could, and it is what it is. I mean, like, I was in the heat. If you just walk through the heat and get to AC, you'll be fine. But this is probably more information than anybody needs. Plus, if any of you get Botox, you probably already know how that works anyway. And if you don't, well then, I don't know, hit me up in the DMs. I'm not going to be that accessible anymore coming up because I'm putting together a Patreon. Everybody needs a little lunch money every now and then. And people always hit me with, hey, have lunch on me, or here's some lunch money. And so, that's part of the thinking with it. And also, I don't know how much I'm going to want to be on the road. So I'll probably start doing more online content and figure that out. Because, just being on the road really isn't for me the way it used to be. That's why sometimes, I get a little short with other comics when it's their first time being on the road and they're just trying to have fun. And I get it. You still see the road that way. I still see it as fun from time to time, or in certain cities I'll check out certain sites, or I went to the Oklahoma City, the Murph Federal Building and stuff like that. I've seen some cool stuff in my time, but at the same time I don't really like being on the road like that anymore. So it's like having to figure that out and knowing the reality and what we're coming out of it, or maybe staying in for a little while. I don't know what's happening. But that's where that's at, So I'm putting together a Patreon, and I like the idea better. Also because YouTube, the thing was, if you remember, a lot of you probably started watching me on YouTube. The people that started watching me from YouTube, which I know I haven't been the best about uploading, and I was doing really well for a while, but this is the reason why. Because the way that they pay on YouTube changed, and so it left less incentive. It was because, when you shoot even a basic video, some of the videos I was doing, because I would edit in pieces from news stories and stuff like that. If you remember when I was doing the 30-day challenge, my 30-day challenge, which was also how I ended up getting monetized on YouTube and getting money in the first place. So it was a good experiment and stuff like that. But it was a different way that they paid when I was doing that. So now they changed it, and the way that they changed it makes it so it's really not worth the time, especially for a person like me that's a little bit more edgy, and so it changes the way that the advertising works and stuff like that. So it is what it is, and I'm not complaining about it even a little bit. I think the main thing right now for everybody, and I know I say this all the time, but is just being willing to evolve with whatever it is that's going on in your industry. That's the best advice I can give to absolutely anybody, is just roll with the punches and see where things take you. Because if you're really rigid right now, it's not going to work out. You see that even with simple things like masks and stuff like that. I've already let it be known on several platforms that I'm not really down with the mask. I don't think it's doing that much. And I know some people get mad at you for even saying that and say you're stupid and you're denying science and whatever. And we can go through that, and I could tell you my reasons and exactly the way I think. And maybe one day I will go all the way into it. But for right now, I would just say that I wear masks wherever I need to wear a mask so that everybody can stay open, so that people can get open. Like, I'm doing my part in that way. So I wish more people were willing to just evolve. You know, like some people don't respect the social distancing. I personally feel like if I'm going to wear a mask so that everybody feels better, then the least you guys can do is social distance, because I don't like having people around me like that to begin with. And then when we have a pandemic, and I know that some people are going to make the numbers go up, I feel like no matter what, I'll be fine. I'm just too healthy. And I know some people will get mad at you for saying that too. But you know, that's the thing with everything. People get mad at you about everything. And at the same time, the people that actually watch my stuff are not that type. Like, the people that pay attention to me get that every once in a while my opinion can be vastly different from yours. And your having a different opinion doesn't bother me. I don't feel like I have to convince you of anything and make you see things my way. And, you know, vice versa. I just feel like, you know, we can just respect each other where we're at and be like, okay, well, there's a million other things to talk about. You know, like, masks aren't the only thing going on in the world. And when you look at some of the stuff that's happening in the world, it's kind of like, do we still have to make trivial things into really big deals when we have so much serious stuff going on? Like, no matter what you think of the pandemic, like me personally, I'll tell you where I'm at with the pandemic itself. Like, I have said this before, I'm not a conspiracy guy on this, so it's not like I feel like it's just a hoax and the government wants to, like, you know, have us cover our mouths so we can't communicate and whatever else. You know, I've heard all of them, and, like, you know, some of them, I think it's important to at least pay attention to the conspiracy theories, because not all of them are crazy. Some of them you're like, well, there could be a grain of truth in that, and I feel like there is at least a grain of truth in almost every conspiracy theory. But when you think about the way that people were reporting, and in some cases misreporting, and then Chicago or Illinois had said that no matter what, if the person has COVID, they consider it a COVID death, even if it's like anything, and it really was anything. If they had tested positive for COVID, then it was considered a COVID death. So when you have that kind of stuff, and then a friend of mine just told me, sorry, let me finish that thought. A friend of mine just told me that they had 2 people that they knew that went in and didn't even get tested, but they told them they were COVID positive. And at first that sounded pretty unbelievable even to me, even though I know my friend wouldn't lie to me, because my friend is a grown man and he's just not that type, and he's not even a conspiracy guy or whatever. He was just saying that this was like a weird thing. But he knew 2 people that went in, didn't even get tested. They told him they had COVID, and then I get home and I see a similar story on Facebook. And so I think it's been a mix of everything that's made everything, like as far as all the numbers and stuff like that, just be off. So you can't really count on that. And then when it came to, like, you know, the Black Lives Matter or George Floyd peaceful protest, the protest, I think that was a really good missed opportunity to actually gather a lot of data, but because they wanted to make sure that they stayed politically correct and didn't blame anything, which I don't think there was like a huge spike because of that, but like obviously it factors in. So if we're trying to figure things out, we need to kind of throw political correctness by the wayside and be like, okay, what's the exact science on this? Like, it doesn't matter what they're protesting. The fact is, we have a lot of people gathered in one particular area. We can do some good research there. Same with Sturgis. Some people were so upset about Sturgis, but if they're going to do it anyway, then why not go see how much data you can collect? And in the end, if you're like, you know, okay, well, we've got a better idea. It's better than where you were before. But instead, everybody wants to be upset about everything, and I just don't live that way. I don't live in panic. I don't live in fear. And I know that that does get under some people's skin because they think we're all supposed to be built the same, but it's like there's a reason different people are designed different ways, you know? Like for me, a lot of times what's going on online is starting to matter less and less just because I have more and more that I actually want to take care of in real life. And also, I have really good people around me. So for me, a lot of times life is going so well that it's like my online life is cool and it's fun or whatever, but it's a distraction. The real life is the life that's right around me. The real life is when I was playing Cards Against Humanity with four of my really good friends. They're both couples, and I was the fifth wheel. Real life is also great. I went to Bellagio and Caesar's Palace and several other sightseeing, just fun things on the Strip with Bruce Leonard and his new girlfriend, Charlie Hester. And I had just met her, and she's such a sweet lady, and they're such a great couple, and it's just great to see your friends in love. The other group that I was with for Cards Against Humanity was two couples that are, married, and there's just so much good right around me that it's kind of like, what do I really need to go online for? So that's becoming a thing too, where it's like you're gonna see me online less and less. And I'll be shooting content, so there'll be more actual like this. But as far as me commenting on stuff or being on Facebook that much or Twitter, I just don't know how much that's going to continue because life is getting so busy. And I know it probably shouldn't be this busy in a shutdown, but it is busy and it's great. And I'm not going to try to stop that to be like, okay, let me focus on my online life. More and more coming up online for me will be more about just promoting. And this is where you guys can talk to me, or you can check me out on my YouTube or that kind of stuff. People are so unproductive in their arguments too. That's the other thing that discourages me from really being online like that anymore. I've met some really great people. Last week when I was talking about Ariel Isaac Norman, who is the co-host of the Gender Fluids podcast, and I was like, I have to listen to Gender Fluids, and I finally did listen to it. You guys can check it out on Stitcher, and it's called Gender Fluids, the podcast is, I believe, what it's called. And but if you just search Gender Fluids on Google, it'll come up. Check it out on Stitcher. Then you don't have to download anything. You can play it right there. Stitcher's really convenient. Unbothered by Ty Rivera is also on Stitcher. But that's besides the point. Anyway, we're talking about gender fluids. And so Ariel hit me up, which last week, if you remember, I was talking about her, and I was saying, I don't know how she identifies, and I think she's non-binary. Turns out she is non-binary. She doesn't, really identify as a non-binary, which maybe one day I'll have her on the podcast however I can. Maybe I'll finally do a Zoom show because I think she's interesting enough and cool enough and, is really my kind of person when it comes to LGBT, because she accepts that non-binary it's a new thing for a lot of people. Even I had trouble navigating it, and she kind of said that she thought I handled it really well or whatever, and that she's fine with people being a little confused. And I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but she still uses the she, her pronouns, and she's she doesn't worry about pronouns or doesn't need pronouns to, I guess, validate what it is she is. I try to use the best words possible because I do accept that things are changing. Like I say, evolution is the key to everything for me. So I take an example like Ariel. Ariel is so great about being willing to explain how she identifies, what she is, and talk about that. And that's what people really do need. Because of the way that she talked to me in the message, usually I'm not a they, them pronouns person, which if you're not familiar, a lot of non-binary people will go by the they, them pronouns. So, you refer to them as basically plural. And usually I'm not down with that. But if I like a person, I will go with whatever it is they want me to go with because I like them as a person, and that's a part of respecting them as a person. But when you yell at me or you come at me with these ridiculous arguments that make no sense, like the other day I was on Twitter, and there was this girl that was giving Jeffree Star a hard time, in his tweets, which Jeffree Star probably didn't even read. But I got annoyed because she was saying that the word was such an offensive word to all lesbians. And I jumped in and I was like, have you ever heard of the march before? Because there's a dyke march at every pride. So if you're trying to say that everybody is offended by this word, keep that same energy when you end up at a pride and you see the march, and go let the know that they are not allowed to identify as that. And so then that turned into this whole thing where she was like, well, it's still very offensive to lesbian. And it's like, you don't get, you don't speak for everybody. And plus, you're not even a lesbian. The girl I was talking to was not a lesbian. Well, then that's when she tried to be like, well, technically I'm questioning. And I was like, so you haven't even like figured it out, but you're arguing with me who's been around forever. And I know so many lesbians. I know so many trans people. I mean, like, I really have lived an LGBT life, even though people try to constantly take that away from me because I vote a different way than they think I should vote, or I say things that I shouldn't necessarily say. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't mean that I'm not LGBT. That doesn't mean that I haven't had the life experiences and met the people that I've met. Like, you can't take that away from me just because I say something you don't agree with. And a lot of people do agree with the things I'm saying when it comes to LGBT. They're just not as vocal about it because they don't feel like arguing. They don't feel like being shouted down. But a lot of us aren't bothered by the words that other people use. Like me, I identify as a like, some people think I do that to be inflammatory. I don't at all. I identify as because when I grew up, we were they were and I didn't realize I was a I didn't want to accept that I was a which I shouldn't say realize, because I knew. I just didn't want to accept it. I wasn't ready to actually make that my reality. Plus, I grew up in a smaller town, well, not a small town, but like a smaller community. And so, like, one day I just owned who I was, and it's a and that's what it is. So, I'm not gonna go backwards in my thinking, and now because you're offended by these particular words and you think nobody should use them, now suddenly I'm gonna start getting offended and acting out of character for what's my normal comfort level at this point. Like, I don't care about other people's words, and I'm not looking to other people to validate me. Like, that's one thing they kept telling me on Twitter, because I ended up going back and forth with quite a few people on that particular thread, which I didn't mind because I felt like they really needed to be educated. And since most of them were identifying as allies, I wanted to let them know, like, this isn't your job as an ally. Like, technically you're not helping. What you do is you make people not want to learn or not want to accept something that's different because you are so not willing to bend. And it's like, that's what a lot of things are about right now. When you have people that do have open minds, like most people I deal with, and I do deal with a lot of people in a lot of more rural areas or places where they're not necessarily the most well-versed in LGBT. A lot of those people, when I talk to them after the shows or when, I'm dealing with them online afterwards, they're actually very open to a lot of things. There's just certain things that they either don't understand or certain lines that they have. And it's okay for people to have their lines. It's okay for people to be like, okay, like, I'm fine with all of this. I'm fine with your pronouns. I'm fine with respecting the way that you identify. I'm fine with, accepting everything to do with you, except for the fact that I don't necessarily think that trans women have a place in female sports. And then suddenly now that person is transphobic, and it's like, no, this one difference of opinion does not make them transphobic, especially when we all know there are biological differences. It's just what it is. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to take hormones. So it's not like anybody's trying to bash you by just pointing out that simple reality. So then we all can just say, like, okay, your way is your way, and the way you see it and the way I see it is the way I see it. And eventually, it'll be decided in some way, whether that be the Supreme Court or the different governing bodies of the different athletic organizations that are in charge of whatever it is we're debating, and it gets decided by people that are not always smarter than us, but that's their job, or that's what they do. There was also a tweet not too long ago that this girl put out where she was like, if you won't date trans women, or you don't think dating trans women is for you, then you're basically it's basically that because you're transphobic and you don't see trans women as women. And it's just like, that's the word. You're not helping right now. Like, you're not helping even a little bit, because now people are feeling like, okay, so in order to accept this, I have to say that I'm okay with dating a trans person, and even be okay with dating a trans person, because maybe even if you call it lady dick or girl dick is another one I've heard, like, maybe that's doing something for the branding on your end, but to a lot of people I know, that just sounds kind of weird, and like it's cool if you want to be different and stuff like that, but you got to accept not everybody's into lady dick or girl dick. Some people don't want any dick. Like, they don't care what gender it's attached to. They're just like, I don't want dick. You know, not everybody wants dick. And I think that that's like a good analogy for like LGBT and the way that people within the community sometimes treat people that haven't had the exposure. It's kind of like the first time you ever took a dick, right? Like, some of you bitches have been throwing it back for years. So you forgot. The first dick you ever took may not have even been a starter dick. Like, you know, maybe it was a big dick, and at first you couldn't take all of that dick. It had to go, you know, like it slipped in a little bit. Maybe your knees buckled, and it, like, you punched a wall and you were like, I don't want to do this. I'm not cut out for this. But then, you know, as you became more and more comfortable with yourself, she just set herself free, and you were ready to be in the ass. And that's what America is going through. Like, they're just taking the head of the dick right now, you know. But it's all coming, and they know it's all coming, and their knees are buckling a little bit sometimes when you really force these ideas. But you got to be patient with the dick. I don't know if that was the best analogy or not, but it was fun for me. I mean, like, I am becoming the king of TMI, and it's not anything I try to do. It's just like, you know, and I don't even think about sex. Well, that's the problem. I don't think about sex the way a lot of people do. Like, one time I got in a huge argument with the guy that I was dating because I told him, you know, like, we had broken up. And then his big thing was like, you know, have you slept with anybody else? Because we were talking about possibly getting back together. And I was like, I don't really feel comfortable answering that question, which of course means that I was. And then he was like, oh my God, I can't believe that you would f somebody else that quickly and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, one, I f. And two, the other thing is, like, to me, sex is like eating. Like, you know, I'm not going to not eat because we're not together, or because we broke up, or because we're on a break, or whatever is going on. You know, I still need to eat, and I still need to have sex, and I still need to, you know, work and do the things I do. And he was like, that's not the same, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, maybe we look at things differently. And so, you know, obviously I'm single now, so slide in them DMs, just playing. I know the botherinas, and the botherinas are not the slide in your DMs type. Like, a lot of people that listen to me are straight and also female, and also, well, it's weird. Like, it's kind of like, you know, well, you know who you are. So, you know, it's like nobody that I'm trying to they're not on my platforms like that. Well, there's a lot of flirting in my Instagram stories, because if you guys haven't seen, I'm naked on the Instagram stories all the time. So, like, if there's a place that people flirt with me, it probably would be Instagram. Well, not probably, it would be Instagram. But, you know, it's like, whatever. Like, and that's the other thing, you know, like, people make such a big deal of sex, and they make it seem like you're such a dirty person for having sex. But if you go and get tested regularly, and you're taking care of yourself, and it's not even a thing, you know, it's just a part of having a fun life. Like, that's one thing I think a lot of people are really, really missing right now, is fun in their lives. And just because you've got a social distance and you can't be out at all the places that you usually go out to, doesn't mean that you can't have a fun life. Like, I think a lot of people get the idea that I'm out, like, with strangers a lot more than I'm out with strangers. Even when I'm out, a lot of times I have a core group that I hang out with, and that's the exposure that I'm getting, is the people that are around me. And like I said, I already don't like people that close to me, so I keep the social distancing going pretty well for myself, you know. So I kind of enforce that. I've told people at the grocery store outright, social distance. You know, when they've been too close, one girl was like, excuse me? And I was like, social distance. And then she was like, oh, and then she backed up. That's what I need. Back it up. You see the little 6-foot marker? That's where you need to be. You know who I hate, though? I'm going to tell you guys, I hate the people that are like, how is it this virus can't go more than 6 feet, not 5'11"? And it's like, here's the deal. the CDC and the WHO decided that it was 6 feet because it's probably really 4 feet, but they knew you goons don't know how to listen. And so, even 4 feet is an estimate. So they said, okay, well, if we think it's 4 that it can spread, then let's make it 6. And then hopefully these goons stay 4 away, and it turns out to be 3. Like, that's the way that things work. I mean, like, some of you guys, it's like, I'm on your side is the worst part. I can't take when people are, like, unwilling to see anything past their own, like, belief system or accept that nobody is perfect. Like, I was on a thread not too long ago, and this lady was like, that's what I love about Donald Trump is he cannot be bought. And I was like, can we at least acknowledge, like, I get tired of people for not, that's the whole reason that I could not vote for Hillary no matter how much anybody wanted me to, was because nobody was willing to admit that A, she was a terrible candidate, or a lot of people that were on the left weren't willing to accept that. They thought she was a gift from God, and also they couldn't acknowledge that there were certain things that she had done wrong, or that she hadn't handled the best. And I was like, well, how do you expect me to go into this with that mindset? Like, a lot of the people that I knew that were supporting Trump, and I know there are the hardcore, the religious zealots that really want to believe he's been sent by God or whatever, but most of the people I were dealing with were like, yeah, he's a flawed candidate, he's a flawed human being, but at the same time, he's better than the alternative. And so I can always accept when people are at least willing to own and be like, okay, well, this is the problem. Because if not, when it came to Hillary, if she had been elected, I feel like a lot more stuff would have flown under the radar that wasn't going to serve us as the American people. So when those are my choices, I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going with the person that nobody trusts and everybody's going to keep an eye on, as opposed to the person that people see as a blessing and are maybe going to get away with more than they should get away with, especially when we know what her history was and her husband's history was. And when people were going hardcore on the, like, she's a feminist type of thing, or she's a feminist icon, it was like, well, not really with the way she treated Paula Jones. Like, if you look into that, and that's not me just digging stuff up, it's just like, I've got to take all of the factors into account when I'm trying to make a decision that's supposed to be pretty important. I know it doesn't all land on me, but I do take my responsibility seriously, so I do look at both sides, and I'm like, okay, this is this and this is that. Sometimes people would bring up very like run-of-the-mill things about Donald Trump, where they'd be like, well, that this isn't his first marriage, and I can't even remember. I think this is his 3rd marriage, if I'm correct. But it's like, yeah, I know he's had failed marriages because I was raised during the time when he was a hot topic, and so if you know anything about that, he was in Star magazine because his mistress, Marla Maples, he booked this hoe, his side chick, at the same, like, ski lodge where he and his family were. So somehow his wife at the time, his first wife, Ivana, ended up crossing paths with Marla Maples, and they had paparazzi shots of them having the confrontation with each other, where I'm sure Ivana was like, you somebody's side bitch. And so it was a whole thing. And then Marla Maples, who became Donald Trump's wife, like, he's one of the ones that did turn his mistress into the wife, and that didn't end up lasting that long, but she had a campaign with the brand of jeans called No Excuses Jeans, and she was a little bit of a celebrity in her own right after her hookup with him. So not really in her own right, if you know what I'm saying, because it was because she was his mistress that she even became a celebrity. And then, of course, he's going to put some money behind her and be like, we need to get this bitch doing something so I can hopefully hedge my bets when it comes to alimony, because this isn't going to last. Plus, she's going to get child support anyway, because she ended up getting pregnant, like, right after they got married. And it was a whole thing. But that was before, like, cancel culture was like what it is now, because now, if a man had his mistress and then his wife ended up confronting her on the slopes, well, first off, TMZ would have got all the audio on that, because, like I said, there was paparazzi around even back in those days. And so it just would have been a whole different situation the way it would have played out now. So a lot of us like lived through that or saw like bits and pieces of it. And then people would bring up the bankruptcies and like, you know, he would talk about that on different morning shows and stuff like that. So a lot of people that were up on pop culture throughout the years, the stuff that people bring up, it's like, yeah, that wasn't, you know, that's not really an issue because it's not a secret. Like we all knew that. So, you know, I know younger generation maybe didn't, but you know, if you remember, Donald Trump was also getting shout outs and rap songs because people wanted to live like Donald Trump. Like, you know, it's so watching the shift and watching the way that he went from being like fun, like pop culture, and he was never, well, he was an icon to some people, you know, like the people that were in finance and stuff like that, even though like when people say about him failing at a lot of things, like everybody knows that. So like he was still a hero though for branding, like, you know, or an icon for branding, because that's why what's it called, The Apprentice was so big, because people did associate with, like, he had a name, you know. So it's not like he's done absolutely nothing, he just hasn't been the best at everything or a lot of things. But I don't really know who's looking for that in this country, you know? Like right now, today, Joe Biden announced that Kamala Harris was going to be his running mate, you know, the VP pick. And it's like her past is so flawed that it's really going to be interesting to see the way that people are going to have to do the mental gymnastics. Like I already see people pulling out the extra big words, because when you don't want to take something head on, you go big words so that it's like, okay, that sounded like it made sense, but you might still be bullshitting me. I don't know exactly, but you might still. I'm not smart enough to work my way around those words, but when I get my dictionary, you might be in a little bit of trouble. There might be a thing between us. I might start getting a real case of the hey yes. But yeah, so we're just going to see how it plays out. You know, I'm personally voting for Donald Trump again. So if that makes you not want to like me, not want to support me, think I need to be canceled, let's make sure we get that out there now. Because I don't want to be dealing... The one thing I hate is because I voted for him last time, and throughout the, you know, his term, I've been pretty, like, vocal about still being good with my vote. But every once in a while, somebody will be brand new and they'll be like, well, now that I know you support him. And it's really weird when it's people that have been following me for several years on social media. It's like, have you never seen any of my posts? Like, did you miss all of 2015? It's really, you know, 2015, 2016, I was having to talk about that and defend that and do all sorts of stuff. You know, I did shows that were around it. I did panels about it. Like, I did a lot of stuff. So when it's like, all this time you didn't know? Okay. But if that's how little you pay attention, then you're not a real supporter anyway. So did I really lose anything? Did I just lose like one click on Facebook or whatever? Or one, not even click, just a person, you know, a number for no reason. It's like when it comes to canceling, that's why I always say, you know, like you can't cancel what you never subscribe to. Like it's just not the way it works. But, you know, I try my best to stay open, even though I know that sometimes I do make people mad. And then, but also it's just par for the course. Like, how can you have opinions in this day and age and not make somebody mad? Like, you know, if I were on the other side, an extreme to the left, then there'd be a lot of people that currently like me now that would be like, you know, not the best with that. But what I like about the right is that they're still open to conversation. And so, like, you know, I can have some good conversations and disagree and then come back to being like, okay, well, we're still friends or whatever. But even some of my friends on the left had gotten a little too extreme for me. Like, there's a guy that I really did respect that ended up becoming just a little too, well, he was becoming a little too toxic on social media, which I know some people would be like, well, that's the pot calling the kettle black. But really, those are people that don't know anything about me, because I'll have a little fun debating or whatever on social media, but I'm not holding on to a lot of stuff, and I don't think about people that much. Like, that's one of the main things with me, is like all of this stuff, I let it go. And at the end of the day, it is what it is, and whatever happened, but I'm not worried about anybody in everyday life. Like I said, I live my life in the real world. So you'll have a little fun on Facebook, troll a little bit, and by trolling, it's not even trolling. Sometimes it's just being like, let's not forget about this, because I am willing to admit that this is going on my side, but then you pretend like that's not happening on your side. And so let's make sure that we're all having an honest conversation right now. And most people seem to get that, even have fun with it. They poke back at me every once in a while, because every once in a while I'll post something that seems a little off or whatever, where they're not getting it, and I'm like, yeah, I'll definitely deal with you poking at me a little bit, and asking me some questions or wanting to know. I don't deal with the people that are at all passive aggressive, though, or just share GIFs all the time. If your entire argument or debate consists of GIFs, I'm not doing it with you. I just don't have time to sit here and be like, oh, well, that's a funny GIF, let me pick one now. It's like, no, let's have a conversation. Let's actually use our words. Let's actually see where we're different, and let's see if maybe we can come to a little bit of understanding. And if we don't come to an understanding, we can just agree to disagree, live to fight another day. But if you try to go on and on about something, I get bored. I'm like, I really didn't care that much. Like, I put something out there, and it's not the hill I'm gonna die on, because there's no hills around me, and I'm not ready to die yet. So it's all of it's just stuff to talk about, it's but the way that people get toxic on Facebook sometimes, like one of my friends, he was like accusing people of using coded language, and like some of the people he was talking to, you could tell by their responses they were true hillbillies, and it was like, yeah, this person isn't sophisticated enough to be talking in coded language right now. There are no dog whistles going on. This person just posted something that you didn't necessarily agree with, but also at the same time arbitrarily was not racist. Like there was one where a guy shared a meme of the man, Daryl is his first name, and I can't remember his last name, but he has talked to a lot of KKK members and actually gotten them to retire being KKK or renounce the KKK, to the point where they've given him their robes and hoods. And it's like, some hillbilly type person was like, this is how it's done. And the other friend was like, thank you for telling black people how they're supposed to handle things. And it's like, no, you don't get that this isn't one that you necessarily need to attack. Because in this particular instance, it's one person being able to see at least one person of color, in their opinion, making a difference and making a positive difference, and doing something in a way other than arguing with people. Now, I listened to Daryl's interview on Joe Rogan's podcast. If you want, search Daryl KKK Joe Rogan on Google, and I'm sure the episode will come up and you can watch it for yourself. But he talks about, in some cases it takes months, in some cases it takes years, literal years, and it's just of him being a non-pressure friend. If you watch the episode, you'll see his style of doing things is through conversation, and he does have to walk through some scary moments. He talked about a scary moment he had where he was meeting with I think it was a grand wizard or a grand dragon of the KKK. I don't remember, but it was somebody really high up, and they had a weird situation where a fan clicked or the AC cut on, and everybody, the guy doesn't have a gun, but the security guy had a gun that was watching over the Grand Master, Grand Dragon. Grandmaster, I think, might be karate. Who knows? I'm not a KKK guy. I just watched the interview and I retain nothing. I tell people are really getting an idea now that they hang out with me more, that I don't retain a lot of stuff. I think I was at the 1 year anniversary for my friend's show, Tom Baum. He has a show coming up this Saturday. And I think I was at the 1-year anniversary for a show, but I can't remember. And the only reason it even got brought up was because the other day he mentioned that it had been over a year now that he'd been doing a show. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that the anniversary had come up. And then he sent me a something sarcastic with emojis. And so I was like, so I would imagine I was probably at the part or at the 1-year anniversary show, or maybe I was. And then he sent me back like, I think you were. And that's how bad my memory is. Like, I don't retain a lot of stuff, so that's also the reason that I don't hold on to grudges or things like that, even though sometimes people will get mad at me and they stay mad at me forever, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't even really remember what our thing was about, and it's not that big a deal to me. There's certain people that have done things that have been wrong enough that I really wouldn't want to be around them or trust them again, but that's pretty rare. Usually it's just kind of misunderstanding stuff, and once people are willing to accept what their role was in the misunderstanding, then I'm fine with it, because I usually know what my role is in things, even sometimes being a little bit more, sometimes I can be a little more hair trigger about certain things, because I'm just like, yeah, I've been through this before, I know how it works, and this one is really going to get on my nerves. So let's not give this a lot of time at all, let's just accept that you up, because when it comes to my discrepancies with people or my differences with people, usually that comes from being on the road, because I don't hang out with people that I don't like, but every once in a while I'll go on the road with somebody that's newer or said they wanted to go on the road, and so I'll take them, and then unprofessional behavior will start happening, and I'm like, some of this I would be all right with because it would just be your business, but the parts that I have a problem with, I really have a problem with, because it does affect my life, it does affect my schedule, it does affect when we get to the show. There are things that are sometimes affected by people's unprofessional behavior that they don't see. And because we're in stand-up comedy, a lot of times people will be like, well, this is supposed to be fun, and we're supposed to be comedians, and we're supposed to have fun. And it's like, yeah, to a degree, we certainly are. But at the same time, we're also professionals working a job right now. We've got a time, we got to be there. We got to make sure that we're there safely. All of these things do matter. So it's not like I just pick reasons to be mad at people or annoyed with people or whatever. And then, sometimes people do have to put up with my quirks when I'm on the road. They're like, I have to put up with theirs and they have to put up with mine. So it's like a balance of filtering out the stuff that's actual bullshit and dealing with the stuff that's just personality quirks and stuff like that. And then understanding what's professional versus what's unprofessional. So when it comes to that stuff, usually at the end for me, it's about lessons and not individuals. In the way that my brain translates it or takes it in and puts it back out, is that it'll throw out a lot of the smaller, more petty details and just hold on to the major issue or the major lesson that the issue ended up exposing. So it was sort of like, okay, well, this particular person maybe drank a little bit more than they should have and wasn't the most responsible, and so the lesson there would be obviously to watch your drinking when you're on the road. And I do miss drinking, even though I am not what you would call sober. It's but I very rarely drink. The last time I really drank was around New Year's. So, it's been 6-7 months, and I've been around a lot of alcohol, but I just don't feel like drinking, But I don't mind when, people that drink more or are younger, so they like drinking more, drink when we're on the road or stuff like that, just as long as it doesn't turn into an unprofessional situation. Do I ever miss drinking? Yeah, I guess sometimes I miss drinking, I miss eating bad food when I was drunk, there's nothing like a drunk ass fucking patty melt. That's one thing. When you're just drunk and making bad decisions and you just slide into a fucking Waffle House and have that good drunk patty melt. That's definitely something I miss, is the food and the bad decisions. But yeah, so, I get that different people are going to have their quirks and whatever, and so I let it go. I just decided in my head, okay, that person's not good for me being on the road with, or that's maybe not somebody that I'm going to recommend for stuff. I don't usually try to hurt people's chances for getting on anything or getting in anything, but like I will definitely be honest if a booker or a club owner or even bar owner is just like, what do you think of this person as a comic? I'll be completely honest. And the hardest part is sometimes people are funny, so it's like they're funny, so they'll be great that way. But what you got to know is they might run up kind of a bar tab, because there's some people that I know that have really done that to a point where like the bookers have been mad about it. Like there's one particular person that I think is so funny and so great, and he helped me out when we were starting out, and I still try to help him out where I can, but I just can't recommend him for stuff because I've seen him really piss off club owners because he's on stage and he's like, all the drinks are free when I'm on stage, and so he'll just ask for a bunch of shots, and by the end of the show sometimes he's completely drunk on stage and can't even do his job or really close it out the way he needs to, and they're upset because he drinks a lot of Patron, and so they're out a bottle of Patron or however much Patron he decided to drink, so that's less money they can make off that particular bottle, and it just stuff like that'll make you look bad. And so it's just one of those things that you have to watch out for. My point with all that is, like, I don't really think about things, I think a lot of times the way that people would think that I do, and I don't hold on to things the way that a lot of people think that I would. And so for me, moving forward, I talked a bit about like the Patreon, like we're going to start a Patreon. My friend Chris Doran is helping me. If you aren't familiar with Chris Doran, super hilarious, going to help me. We're going to figure things out on the Patreon. But like that's more where I want to focus on things that I can actually build, on things that I can actually excel with, like anything from the past, I'm not really trying to deal with on that level. Like I don't care about old school arguments or any of that stuff. Like if I don't like you, I just don't hang out with you. I don't with you, as the kids would say. And like I feel like that should be the same for you. Like sometimes I hear that people are like talking about me or like telling stories about when we went on the road together and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, you can do that if you want to. I don't mind at all. It doesn't bother me. I don't mind having the stories out there, but the only thing that I usually think about is, wouldn't you rather move forward with your life? Wouldn't you rather worry about what it is you're doing or what it is you have coming up? It seems like a waste of time to put all of your like effort and in all of your like creative juices into a person that doesn't think about you, doesn't care about you, doesn't want anything to do with you, like. But I don't get in the habit of telling people how to deal with their delusions, so when people do choose to do that, I just feel like, okay, well, that's for you and you can continue to do that. I personally, though, am going to be doing things that will help me out as a person and get me to where I want to be and to the level that I want to be at, because there's certain things that I just don't want anymore. Like I said, when it comes to being on the road, I'll do it as much as I have to coming up, but I don't really want to be on the road. And I should mention that I did Sacramento Saturday. I did Laughs Unlimited in Sacramento. And the way that was supposed to work out was I booked it in December. And so, in December there was no shutdown. We didn't know anything was going to be going on. And Jenny wanted me to do it because it's a 40-year anniversary of that show. And Jenny is the owner, and I really do like Jenny, and I like the way she treats comics, and I like the way that she looks at comedy, and I did her podcast at one point. Well, it's the club's podcast. It's the Laughs Unlimited podcast, which I don't remember what it's called, but you can search that online too. But, we had a really great conversation, and just, when I'm there, she's always been really nice to me. She headlines me, she's just really great with me. And so, even though the plan was, when I booked it in December, it was like, okay, I'll put other stuff around it and then I'll make it so it's worth it to just do the one night there. And then that turned out not to be the way that it worked out because of COVID. You can't really put together a run like you usually would. And so I had to do it as a one-off. So it wasn't like it was lucrative for me at all. But for me, the important part was actually being there for somebody that actually has supported me when it comes to stand-up. And so, you know, I had to be there in the way my thinking works, in the way my value system works. I had to be there. And I was glad that I went, because I got to see a part of what might be the evolution of what becomes live stand-up, you know, which we had headphones on, and then you could hear the audience reacting to you through the mic. The audience also had headphones on. We were outside. It was perfectly social distance. They weren't like playing. Jenny is not playing with any of those rules. Like every one of the rules and guidelines that they gave her, as far as like, you know, being able to open and stuff like that, she is fully respecting. So it's a really good model, I think, for people to look at, you know, because there's plenty of space between parties. Everything's outdoors. You know, people don't have to be close to the stage because I have the mic and it's going directly into their headphones. I also have headphones on so I can hear the laughter that's going through the mic too. And so you have to adjust your timing a little bit. But, you know, it's not at all hopeless, and it wasn't at all, to me, such a terrible thing that you can't work around it. So, like, you know, that was great for me to see, because it does get a little bit disappointing sometimes that what you love to do isn't, you know, really an option. And some people, I guess, would be a little confused when I say I don't want to be on the road anymore, but then I also say that I love what I do. Well, I love performing. Like that, I don't know that I would want to give up. But like being on the road or doing this kind of stand-up where you're on the road as much as I was, especially in the last 2 years, you know, like the road, I don't feel like I have a lot of that left in me, you know, like it's exhausting. And so, but I still love the performing, you know, I love especially crowd work, or, you know, that kind of person to person, and seeing people at their happiest, and, you know, all the best parts about doing stand-up, you know. But then also, like I said, there's the newer comics that are all about cancel culture and what's politically correct and what's acceptable and what's triggering, and that too is like making comedy less fun, because it's like, how about you just write a good joke, and if people laugh, you enjoy that. And like, when other comedians do good jokes, even if they're not in line with your political beliefs or the way that you see things, that you just accept that they're a good joke because you like doing stand-up, because you love stand-up, because, you know, you like to laugh, because you like seeing people laugh, because you like making people laugh. Like, these are the things that, like, for stand-up, for me, that are so great about stand-up, you know, is all the happiness, all the laughter, all the like good times, and giving people memories, you know, whether it's their birthday, which I mentioned Andrew Jacobson at the beginning and saying him happy birthday. And I know I have a terrible singing voice, and I always hate when I have to kind of do that, or I always hate when I do that kind of stuff or have to do that kind of stuff, because you know, it's outside of my comfort zone, but I force myself to do it, even though I do it in a jokey way. But like Andrew Jacobson is somebody that's really supported me, and I don't know where he first saw me. You know, I would imagine my Joe Coy days, because he's been around for a long time, and he's also really supported me through a lot of stuff, you know, been a really good, positive voice for me, and stood up for me in certain situations. And, you know, like, he's just one of those good people that you end up meeting when you're doing stand-up, you know, or when you're performing. And so, like, you know, I like that part too, like making friends and having people, you know, follow your stuff and actually care what happens to you. And it shows a good part of the world for me, you know, like all of that stuff. So with a lot of what's happening, it just doesn't make me happy the same way, when, you know, it's like, is somebody going to write a blog about this stupid joke that I do? Because I don't have time for that. Or when I was having that situation with the LGBT Center, which I'll tell that whole story. And the LGBT Center, though, was great when I went to visit them. It's kind of... telling the story will be easy, because I'm going to write it out and fully tell you guys the story so you know exactly the way it went, because so many people stood up for me during that I feel like you guys deserve the full story. And but I also don't want to badmouth the LGBT Center here in Las Vegas, because the way that meeting went, they really did give me a lot of leeway, and I had a previous relationship with them from before, which I'll also talk a little bit about. But it was productive, my meeting with the LGBT Center in Las Vegas. And so when I tell the story, I don't want to in any way disrespect them. But I also, like I said, feel like it's an important story to tell, and it'll show, like, you know, how some people get involved that really shouldn't have gotten involved, and like make it into this big thing when it's really like, my purpose is to make people laugh. That's like my job. So that is my first intention and the way that I go at everything. But when it comes to like LGBT and me trying to explain, I'm trying to be a little bit more of a bridge between people. So when I have people trying to cancel me or getting mad at me when I have the best intentions, I'm not worried about your cancellation, because I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing anyway. I'm just going to send your cancellation back, give it a quick return to sender. You can have that. You can do whatever you want with it, because I've been doing the kind of stuff I do for a long time now. And a lot of people that I work with, you know, I've been working for a long time. So not only do they know what it is they're going to get when they have me, or a version of what they're going to get when they decide to have me, they love that. That's the reason that they book me. But then I have people that aren't related to comedy, or sometimes the affected community, trying to tell me what it is I should and shouldn't be saying. And that's kind of taken some of the fun out of it, you know? So I'd rather be a little more in charge of what I do, and even though I stay pretty good at being in charge of what I do, but a little more in charge of what I do, and the direction it goes, and the way that I work it. Can you work it? Work it. Flip it and reverse it. Almost said reserve it. Put my thing down, flip it, and reserve it, girl. Anyway. Be on the lookout. I'm going to put the Patreon out soon. And so then you guys can make sure I get my lunch money. There are going to be a couple tiers for you guys. We'll start off real low, like a $5 tier. And that'll be, you know, Bijou's rent. Because that bitch got to cough some up, you know. I've been paying for her deposits that are non-refundable everywhere that we've lived since we've been together. You know, I make sure we always stay places where she can stay. That little girl has really gotten a free ride for a long time. So if you guys can help her out, because I will evict. That's what you guys don't get, is that Bijou is very cute, but I will evict. So this has been a ranty one, you guys. I hope you liked it, though. So whatever, and everybody stay unbothered.